Hello everyone, so in this video I will be discussing Lab 2, which is about lab skills. I was going to include more of a safety procedure. All I'm going to really link is a safety video. I really want you to watch that. If we were in an in-person class, so hard to say, you would be abiding by all of those safety rules and procedures and policies. So just please watch that safety video I have linked right under this one, and that'll count for your safety. Now, regarding lab skills, that's actually part of our Achieve lab that we're completing. So once again, you have opened your Lab 2 folder within our course content, within our lab Blackboard shell. And you see these three Achieve links. And again, background, procedures, and then the actual assignment that you'll be completing relevant to this lab. That's always your deliverable. That's always your action item that you complete in order to receive a grade. One thing I do want to know, I forgot to mention this in Lab 1, the PreLab 1 video. You will not see your grades on this lab shell, which means on this Blackboard site. You will see your lab grades along with everything else on your lecture Blackboard, okay? Because your grade for both the lecture and lab will be the same, and it's composed of things for lecture and lab. So that's why I have everything calculated on there, because it's one whole grade. If I just have the lab grades here, it doesn't really reflect your full comprehensive grade, including assignments relevant to lecture and assignments relevant to lab. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. But basically, the only thing relevant on here is you'll see the PreLab videos and the links. Okay, so you opened up, for example, the first link, your background. This is what you'll see. You'll see this page with your background. We start off with just a general description as always. Here's some tables. The background always provides really helpful information. And it's really, summarized, which I think is really helpful. So you have your prefixes, which all of this you're actually learning in lecture. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And it also goes into sig figs, which is really important. You're going to see a lot of emphasis on sig figs in the lab assignment for Lab 2. Okay, and I'll show you this, but here's the sig fig rules. Again, something we're learning in lecture. Sorry. So in this lab, you will take some measurements to practice measuring. You will measure the volume of a liquid, mass of a liquid, and a solid. And you will also learn how to measure properly with the correct amount of sig figs. So that's the background. Next up is your procedures. Again, I'm not gonna, read step by step and put you to sleep, but just wanted to give you an overview. So measure the volume of a liquid, which means you're measuring typically, and this was actually in your background, so let me head back there for just a second. For volume, the base metric unit is a liter. Now, you can have prefixes in front of that. So it could be a milliliter. It could be a kiloliter. I know that's not common, but it could be. But that's what we measure for volume. And then the next experiments are about mass. So notice that. Mass solids, mass liquids. Now let's go back to the background real quick. For mass, our base unit is kilogram in terms of metric units. But overall, the base is the gram portion of that. Okay. And I know this is really small. I'm sorry when you're watching this video. Your best bet is just to open up the lab itself, like on your computer or your tablet or phone, and just zoom in because it's really tiny. I'm just looking at table 22.02. That's all I'm zooming in on, or all I'm talking about. But the mass unit is grams, so that's most likely what you'll be measuring in, okay? So you are first measuring the volume of a liquid. You are using different size glassware, different glassware in general, beakers, and then a graduated cylinder. So just pay attention to what exactly you're measuring in and make sure to record anything you need. We will be measuring to the meniscus, especially for the graduated cylinder. For those of you who don't know, the meniscus is the line that you read whenever you're reading a graduated cylinder. And you know that the lowest part of the meniscus is what you take into account in order to take the measurement. And then we go on to measuring masses. So we go from measuring volumes using either graduated cylinder or beaker to measuring masses, which means you're going to use the balance. Okay. So the same way that you can weigh, an item on a scale, food on a scale, anything on a scale, you're going to weigh your mass that you're working with. And then you will weigh mass of a solid. Okay. So that is your procedures. So always remember the actual entry point is right here. Enter your virtual lab right here. So that's what I clicked. And then you click Start Lab. And then you put everything on. I'm going to skip the animation this time. Okay, so here we are in the virtual lab once again. So a few things I wanted to show you. The balance. I showed this to you in lab 1, but just wanted to show you again. There's something called zeroing, and on other scales you may see it as tare, T-A-R-E, but here it tells you 0. So the way you put things on the scale and read their masses. So for example, if I wanted to take the mass of this beaker, you just drag it on there and then it reads it for you. Let's say you wanted to add something to this beaker or to whatever you have on top of here, right? And you want to start with a fresh measurement, a new measurement, not anything of this beaker, right? Disregarding this beaker. Zero it out, and then you can start adding whatever you want. So I believe that's what you'll be doing on measuring the mass. You're actually going to take an Erlenmeyer flask, not a beaker, the way I did. Couldn't think of that for some reason. So you would take an Erlenmeyer flask, put it onto the balance, zero the balance, right? It just takes away that mass, and then you're going to be adding salt. So you're going to do that with a few different things, okay? And notice when you take it off, it shows negative because it's not there anymore. So you just zero it again, okay? So that's the balance. Another thing you will be doing is measuring liquids, right? So let's say you want to measure water, and it showed this message to me when I tried to show this to you on lab 1 as well. But let's say you want to measure some water. I grab the water. I'm holding the cursor right now. You have to add it specifically to a container, otherwise it won't add it for you. So you would enter whatever amount you want and it would pour it out for you, right? And here it's telling you there's a max, right? There's only so much you can fit in this beaker. That's liquids. Yeah, any liquid that you want. For solids, it'll tell you grams, right? Enter an amount of grams. And you could do that when it's on the balance as well. Again, that's something that you'll be doing. You'll be measuring the mass of a liquid. So in the same way that I just showed you, where you put the container on the balance and then you bring over your liquid, right? So as I mentioned previously in lab 1 video, you'll get the hang of it. After a while, this just gets repetitive, like me showing you. In future labs, I will be showing you how to use different instruments such as the Bunsen burner and the pressure gauge thermometer, because you haven't just yet for the Bunsen burner and pressure gauge. I believe you use the thermometer in lab 1, so you'll probably be fine on that one. And that's pretty much it for measuring. Now, I mentioned this for using the materials and the glassware and the instruments. Now, what are you going to be assessed for on the lab assignment? And that is where keeping proper records of what you are doing is very important. Okay, so I mentioned this actually in the previous video, the PreLab 1 video. This instrument has a precision of up to 3 decimal places. So it's a pretty good balance. It provides, a good amount of decimal places, but there are other balances or other instruments that could provide even more. So they would be considered even more precise. And you have to really, you have to take advantage of that, right? You have to record based off of what your instrument is, putting out there, what it's showing, what it's indicating. So always notice the maximum amount of sig figs that you can record. So for something like this, it's easy because it tells you the decimal places right there, and then you just record all of them and that's it. Make sure to record everything. Now for something that you're reading, like a piece of glassware or a graduated cylinder, it gets a little bit different because there's nothing popping up electronically, right? So I'm going to add a random amount, not a random, but I'm just going to add that, right? So I added some, what was it? Hydrochloric acid, just so we can have a liquid to measure. Now, in the lab, right now I was able to enter how much I wanted, right? But in the lab, you would have to pour manually, which you can't stop exactly at a certain amount, right? I mean, you could try your best, but sometimes you'll overfill a little bit or not enough, but sometimes you end up using that, right? And what you do is you just take the measurement. You take the measurement by looking at the meniscus. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. The meniscus is this little curve. And the lowest part of the meniscus is where you actually measure. So let's say we poured this out, like in a lab in person, and I wanted to measure it. I would get down to eye level with the graduated cylinder, and I would look at this little line, this little smiley face, and you look at the lowest part of it, and you look at where the measurement line is, and you would see, okay, I would pretty much, record this as 50.0. Now, how do I know that I have 1 decimal place right after that 50? That is because I have some incremental marks here, right? I have some ticks here, some readings here, right? Different smaller increments. And they are going in 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Wow. I completely misread that. I was like looking at this and thinking, oh, it's 49. Anyway, what this is actually going at is by 1 ml increments. Wow. I totally had like a brain fart. Please excuse me. But anyway, it's going in 1 ml increments. So actually, I would just record the 50. That's what I would record. So it's going 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. You were probably screaming internally when I was reading that. You were like, what? Anyway, caught it. Mistakes happen. That's completely okay. You'll notice I make mistakes, but I always like either a student catches it and, I just correct it, or I catch it and I'm like, dang it. But anyway, I would record based off the ones place here. So because this is going in increments of ones, I would say this is 50 ml, right? Just like 50 and then ml. Okay, that's how I would read that. And probably the same thing here with beakers. Anyway, that's a short demo on how to measure with those, with beakers and graduated cylinders. I talked about the precision of the balance. I think that's it. Now I actually want to show you the lab assignment so you can know why I would talked about that for so long. So notice that the first question, for example, which measurement had the greatest number of sig figs? The one that produced the most precision, the one that you could say, okay, 50 versus 50.1 ml. If you could say 50.1, then that's more sig figs versus just 50. So that's what you're keeping in mind. So if you understand sig figs, this lab should be pretty easy for you. And then again, it's asking about sig figs for graduated cylinder, masses, things you recorded, a lot of different things, a variety of different things, right? Which container is the most precise? The one that provides the most amount of sig figs is the most precise. So, you're learning as you go along. Remember, it does give you resources and it does give you hints, okay? So always feel free to use those. Notice you do again have short answer questions. So like I said, please answer those in full sentences. And you have a total of 15 questions for this one. And like I said, hopefully you are getting the hang of it. Let me know if you have any questions at all, and I will be here to help.